Welcome in to Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis, back in Nashville after several days in Washington, D.C. Appreciate all of your support. It is Thursday, almost the weekend, and I hope you guys are having a fantastic Thursday. Want to remind you off the top, Outkick the Show is presented by Oddshark. Go to Oddshark for all of your gambling and informational related needs. And I also want to encourage you to go to thehomeloanexpert.com right now. It's the holiday season. If you are spending more money than you anticipated and you'd like to save a few months without having to pay a mortgage and also turn your rate from a 4% down to a 2%, you will be glad that you did. Get hooked up today, thehomeloanexpert.com. All right, boys and girls, we got a lot to get to. First of all, your long national nightmare is over. The University of Tennessee has hired Jeremy Pruitt, Alabama's defensive coordinator. He'll be the next coach. I will explain why I think that's a good hire, why it's much better than Greg Schiano. I'm also going to run through all of the coaching hires that have been made so far. Only Oregon is still outstanding. I will give you a grade on every coach that has been hired so far, and I will explain to you why I think Hugh Freeze as the next offensive coordinator of a big-time program could make a lot of sense. But let's go back and circle back again to the long 25-day national nightmare that was the University of Tennessee's quest to hire a head coach. And let me explain why I think it's a good hire and why I think it's a much better hire than Greg Schiano, the awful hire made by now deposed University of Tennessee athletic director. Greg Schiano's hire was awful, why John Curry's hire was also awful. So here we begin, okay? And I would encourage you to go back and watch a couple of the old Periscopes. You can go back and watch them if you want to see the history of why the University of Tennessee absurdity exploded into public like it did. But what I would encourage you to do is go back and check those out. And if you do so, you'll understand that Jimmy Haslam, who today fired another top executive with the Cleveland Browns and said that he's going to keep his head coach right now in place even if he goes 1-31 to start, which is unbelievable. The Browns, is a great stat for you. The Cleveland Browns since November of 2014 are 4-45. And Hugh Jackson is only responsible for, whatever the math is on that, 1-27 of them. I think 1-27 of them. So to me, that is absolutely and utterly insane. And so to me, when you really break this down, hold on. Somebody coming on here and taking shots at me early, I happen to look over, dead. I'm not looking pale. I've got a lot of lights on me, all right? It's winter. Give a guy a break. Come on. Dead man. Oh, I'm going to have to kill a couple people early. Another dead man. Anybody want to step? Anybody want to step to the man, the myth, the legend? Don't step to me. Every now and then I look over at the messages. And if I see the messages and I think, is that the kind of message that a pussy would send, then they're gone forever. They never are able to return. They're gone forever, buried off into the distance. You can't ever see. And you know what always happens? These guys slide into my DMs or they come on Twitter and they say, hey, can you please let me back on your Periscopes? I love them. Why did you block me? And I say, hey, 90% of the time, I don't even see the messages. I don't even read any of the words. But if I happen to glance over and I see that it's not very good, then I go ahead and wipe people out. And it is it's a consequence. Same thing every now and then on Facebook. I'll go back through and I'll just kill people, all right? So I like the Jeremy Pruitt hire for this reason. It has the potential to be really successful if he puts together the staff that I'm hearing he's going to put together, the staff that I think he's going to put together, okay? And that was a convoluted way of saying, look, you know that the defense is going to be good. I talked to a couple of coaches here recently and I said, you're good on the offensive or the defensive side of the ball as a coordinator. That's why you get a head coaching job. How do you reconcile the new role that you're going to have when you become a head coach? Do you continue to maintain your already strength, which is the defensive or the offensive side of the ball, or do you try to become an executive? And what a lot of people say, honestly, is that what has become successful for them is they just own the side of the ball that they were already good at, and then they find somebody else that they can trust on the opposite side of the ball. In other words, the CEO head coach doesn't really work out very well in our modern environment. Most guys are pretty good at one side of the ball or the other, and then they find somebody else they can trust. And so if you look at that scenario, Jeremy Pruitt has been to 3 different places. He's been to Alabama, he's been to Georgia, and he's been to Florida State, and his defense has been successful at all 3 of those places. So to me, if you know that the defensive side of the ball is going to be good, if he just takes control of it, what's really going to make or break a Jeremy Pruitt hire will be who he gets as his offensive coordinator. And we'll talk a little bit about Hugh Freeze because I think he's potentially in the mix down the road. We'll talk about all the permutations and association from there. Obviously, recruiting is a big part of it, but the fact that his defense has been successful in all 3 different places makes me believe that he could be a hire, the likes of which we saw with Kirby Smart. Now, here's the other thing I would say. When I rank these coaching hires, you guys are going to see, in the playoff this year, there are 4 guys in the playoff this year. 3 of them got their first jobs at the teams that they took to the playoff. This is an interesting trend. Dabo Swinney had, I don't believe, ever been an offensive or defensive coordinator. He was a wide receivers coach when he took over after Tuberville was fired at Clemson, and he has continued to win since, and obviously he's got Clemson on a roll. Kirby Smart in year 2, never had been a head coach before. He's now got Georgia into the playoff. Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma, never had been a head coach before. He's now got Oklahoma in the playoff. The only one of the playoff teams right now who had been a head coach before, Bowden at Clemson. Tommy Bowden, not Tommy Tuberville. Yes, sorry. Tommy Bowden, not Tommy Tuberville. My apologies. Deal with it. You know who the fuck I'm talking about, all right? I don't like when people correct things and you know what the intent was, all right? Tommy Tuberville, Tommy Bowden, one of the fucking Tommies, all right? This is not a useful correction, all right? I'm big for corrections. You're like, wait a minute, I think you're wrong here. That has nothing to do with the point, okay? That is just like a random correction that has nothing to do with the point and just kills the overall flow of the argument. Don't be a pussy, all right? Everybody knows I meant Tommy Bowden, not Tommy Tuberville, all right? The fucking Bowden. Tommy the Bowden, not Tommy the Tuberville, all right? Take it, all right? So, if you look at the overall success, that is the truth of the overall situation, right? There were 3 guys from the OC who had never had head coaches before that are now in the playoffs. Nick Saban is the exception, okay? Here is the truth. You never know with the coordinators, and that's why I am going to break down the hires from this perspective. Everybody likes to use the phrase home run to describe a coaching hire. So I went even more specific in baseball terminology to expand all of it, all right? Here we go. Number 1 overall. Grand slam, without question, the best hire that was made by anybody so far during the coaching off season, Chip Kelly to UCLA. This is a grand slam. Not only do you have to consider the team that's making the hire, but you have to consider the program and what their history has been and where Chip Kelly ranks. I believe already in the last 30 years, Chip Kelly is better than anybody UCLA has ever had before. So, Chip Kelly to UCLA is a grand slam, maybe even a walk-off grand slam in Game 7 to win the World Series. I think it's a phenomenal hire. I think it's an incredible hire. I think it's a difference-making hire for UCLA. I think there's nothing else like it. Okay, number 2 overall. A home run hire. Not a grand slam, but still a home run. Anybody out there who is not impressed that Texas A&M is able to pull away a national championship winning coach in the prime of his coaching career is a Longhorn fan who is just trying to hate, all right? Not doing the hating, Longhorn fans. I'm just saying, if you're hating on the Jimbo Fisher hire, you are a Longhorn fan or you have no intelligence whatsoever. This was the ultimate helicopter dick move. They filled up the Travis dump truck. They paid him $75 million to move from Tallahassee to College Station. Jimbo Fisher has been great with quarterbacks, whether you want to talk about Jameis Winston, who may have gotten away with rape, whether you want to talk about all of the Christian Ponder, whether you want to talk about E.J. Manuel, everybody who has played quarterback just about under Jimbo Fisher has been great. And a lot of people are going to focus on the 6-6 this year. DeAndre Francois, if he doesn't get hurt, if DeAndre Francois doesn't get hurt, this is an 8-4 or 9-3 football team right around the top 25. They lost a lot of close games this year. Florida State still had an awful lot of talent. I'm telling you right now, Jimbo Fisher to Texas A&M is a solid home run. Triple. Scott Frost. Now, some of you are going to say, wait a minute. Scott Frost has got to be a home run. I'm a little bit apprehensive on the home run talk because he's only been a head coach for 2 years. When you've only been a head coach for 2 years, that means there's not a lot of data points to demonstrate how good you are. And so Scott Frost is going to be a substantial improvement. There's no doubt for Nebraska. He's going to make a lot more relevance for them. But this is a triple for Nebraska that has the potential to turn into a home run if Scott Frost can leg it out and run past the guy saying, stop, stop. I just don't know that you're going to be able to recruit at a high enough level at Nebraska to win. It sounds crazy, but Central Florida is able to get better players than Nebraska is right now. I think certainly he's helped by being able to coach in the Big Ten West. But again, just a triple. He went 6-7 in his first year. This year he's gone 12-0. I'm telling you right now, just a triple for Scott Frost. So to refresh, for everybody who's coming in late, by the way, I'm Clay Travis. This is Outkick the Show. I do this every afternoon. Thank you for hanging with us. Grand slam, walk-off home run in Game 7, Chip Kelly to UCLA. Jimbo Fisher to Texas A&M, home run. Scott Frost to Nebraska, triple. These guys are doubles. These guys, I believe, are doubles. And one of them is a little bit not as impressive of a double. It's like he stretched a single into a double. Dan Mullen to Florida is a solid double. Dan Mullen if they had gotten Chip Kelly at Florida, would have been a home run. Would have been a home run. That would have been the guy who made me nervous. That would have been the guy that I thought, we might have Steve Spurrier or Urban Meyer Part 3 going on down in Gainesville. Dan Mullen's going to be good, but he's not going to be incredible. This is a solid, nice shot to the rolls to the wall, nice gap shot, no trouble at all, easy double, stand up, the kind where you just jog into second base and you're like already taking your batting gloves off as you jog into second base. No doubt on the throw. Also, Willie Taggart to Florida State, I feel like is a solid double. No doubt about it, easy to second base. I feel like Arkansas potentially, with Chad Morris, got a single that potentially got stretched into a double. I just don't think there's enough of a history there for Chad Morris to believe that he's going to be a tremendous success, but I feel like it's a really good hire for Arkansas. The best of their options once Gus Malzahn said no. With a bunt. Bunting and getting on base, legging out the single. We got Matt Luke at Ole Miss. Not a great hire, not an awful hire. Solid, you turn the ball around, don't strike out, 2-strike bunt, laid down the line very well. Matt Luke legs it out for Ole Miss. I think it's a good hire in the context in which it was made, but it's the equivalent when you take the interim of laying down the bunt. It's literally the floor. You know the interim is going to take the job. You know you have no risk. Matt Luke with a bunt to get on base. Again, running through the hires so far. Chip Kelly, walk-off grand slam, Game 7 of the World Series. Jimbo Fisher to A&M, home run. Scott Frost to Nebraska, a triple. Solid into the gap hit, stand-up double for Dan Mullen. Willie Taggart also, solid double. Chad Morris maybe legging the single into a double for Arkansas. Laying down the bunt, getting to first base. No doubt at all, Matt Luke. Strikeout. Strikeout on 3 straight pitches without even taking the bat off your shoulder. Arizona State hiring Herm Edwards. No way to defend it. Nobody out there right now is like, damn, you know who's lucky? The guys who got Herm Edwards. Herm Edwards, poor Arizona State Sun Devil fans. That, my friends, is a strikeout. 3 blazing fastballs right down the middle, and Herm Edwards just standing there. No idea why you play to win. You play to win the game, Herm. Arizona State ain't playing to win the game. And by the way, how about the fact that Herm Edwards' former agent hired him, and they're keeping every single member of the staff on the staff? I've never even heard of this happening. They paid $12 million to fire Todd Graham, and they are keeping every single other staff member there. And Herm Edwards is just coming on and he's now their boss. Can you believe that? I wouldn't even want to take a job as the CEO of any company in America if you told me that I couldn't bring a couple of my guys or a couple of my crew to work with me. You're just walking into that coach's room and you don't know anybody at all. This is one of the dumbest decisions I've ever seen in the history of coaching. Okay, that is different level, different caliber, lack of intelligence. Okay, that is the truth. All right, here we go. These, we don't know. Right now, there is a 3-2 pitch coming, and the bases are loaded, but we have no idea what the outcome is going to be. Joe Moorhead to Mississippi State, Jeremy Pruitt to Tennessee, Josh Heupel to Central Florida, and Jonathan Smith to Oregon State. All of those hires could potentially be good. But I think when you don't know what's going to happen, you're standing there with the bat on your shoulder, 3-2, and the bases are loaded. You have the opportunity to be a grand slam hire, the likes of which we haven't seen before. You also have the opportunity to go down swinging. We don't know. Anytime you hire a coordinator, I feel like anybody who says, hey, this guy's definitely going to be a success is crazy. So that's the situation, top to bottom. Chip Kelly, grand slam walk-off Game 7 winner to UCLA. Jimbo Fisher, a home run. No doubt at all about that. And this situation here, Scott Frost to Nebraska, is undoubtedly a triple. Jimbo Fisher's a home run. Dan Mullen to Florida, nice double. Same thing with Willie Taggart. Chad Morris to Arkansas is a single that was legged out. He had to dive in under the tag to get a double into Arkansas. Strikeout, Herm Edwards, and then we got 4 guys who were hired. Joe Moorhead to Mississippi State, Jeremy Pruitt to Tennessee, Josh Heupel to Central Florida, Jonathan Smith to Oregon State. All of them got 3-2 counts with the bases loaded. Matt Luke bunted for a base hit. Okay, couple of additional things. Let's get into the next question. Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze, there's an article up about him today that I just read. Hugh Freeze is getting significant interest from a variety of programs across the country. The NCAA results, his only penalty was a 2-game suspension as a head coach. He has no penalty as an assistant coach. There are several different SEC schools that are all inquiring and pursuing on some level Hugh Freeze, at least to see what the possibilities are. Among those schools that need an offensive coordinator for sure, Missouri, Texas A&M where he doesn't fit, potentially LSU, certainly Tennessee, certainly South Carolina. There are a lot of jobs out there, and I'm not sure where exactly Hugh Freeze fits, but I think he is a good hire. Now, I asked you this question earlier. I always like to poll my followers as well and see what you guys think about ideas and see whether they correspond with the idea that I have. So, in this situation right now, this morning on Outkick the Coverage, my morning radio show, hate to brag, but you can hear it on nearly 300 AM FM stations nationwide, Sirius 218, XM Channel 202. I asked the question, would you be okay with your program hiring Hugh Freeze as offensive coordinator this year? 62% of you said yes. 38% of you said no. Now, all of you can give your verdict here on the show as well. Yes or no as to whether you would hire him as an offensive coordinator. Now, let me explain why my answer would be yes. My answer is the same as 62% of these voters. Nearly 19,000 of you have voted in the online poll. You can go find me on Twitter at Clay Travis. Here is the reason why I believe I would hire Hugh Freeze, okay? First of all, I have always made a big distinction between personal failings and failings that influence others in a negative fashion outside of your life. Let me explain. When Bobby Petrino got his incident on the motorcycle and hired his mistress and lied about it and everything else, and Arkansas fired him, Bobby Petrino disappeared for a year and then came back, and he was hired by Western Kentucky. Great hire by their athletic director, Todd Stewart. And he coached there for a year, and then Louisville hired him when Charlie Strong left for Texas. And subsequent to that, Bobby Petrino won a Heisman Trophy for Louisville and has had a lot of success. This year they fell off a little bit. They only went 8-4 because they had a bad defense and they couldn't stop anybody. But if you look at that trajectory, Bobby Petrino was out of coaching for a year, then he got back in at a lower level coaching job, and then within 2 years, he was back at the same level of coaching that he had been at Arkansas before. And there was absolutely no issues, right? So, why would the same not be true for Hugh Freeze? Hugh Freeze had issues within his wife with sexual fidelity in their relationship. To me, that is a private issue that is to be determined between internally for his family. Nobody's perfect. If his wife is willing to deal with his failings and keep him as a husband, that's fine. If she were wanting to walk away from him and didn't want to stick to him, that's fine too. I have no issues with anything that people decide when they're in a marriage, okay? That's a private failing. And on the scale of private failing, it's similar to Petrino's, but it's actually not as bad because Bobby Petrino hired his mistress, setting up all sorts of potential sexual harassment issues for Arkansas. And if the penalty for Bobby Petrino was that he had to sit out for 1 year and then he got back in as a head coach, I don't understand how anybody out there could have an issue with Hugh Freeze coming back to coach as an offensive coordinator. He's been humbled. He's been humiliated. He's been publicly dragged through the mud. And he served, I think, a pretty substantial penalty. So I always say, same reason, by the way, I didn't want Bill Clinton to be impeached for getting a blowjob from an intern. I am lenient when it comes to personal failings, okay? I believe in second and third chances when people are talented at the jobs. And I think Hugh Freeze is talented. I think Bobby Petrino is talented. Inevitably, people are going to say, well, what about Greg Schiano? You're a hypocrite because people usually on social media are not smart enough to actually use their brains and distinguish between different cases. Well, I think Greg Schiano, first of all, is not a very successful coach, okay? People say, why do you like Jeremy Pruitt and you don't like Greg Schiano? Because Jeremy Pruitt offers the opportunity for a grand slam. He may not deliver, just like Joe Moorhead offers the opportunity for a grand slam at Mississippi State, just like Josh Heupel offers the opportunity for a grand slam at Central Florida, just like the guy that Oregon State offers the opportunity for a grand slam. You don't know how those guys are going to be good at coaching. They could strike out or they could be grand slams. Greg Schiano was a walk. If Tennessee had hired Greg Schiano, he would have been a walk. A guy that wasn't well liked in the NFL, a guy that did not win at a high level at Rutgers at the end of his tenure, right? He built the program and then he basically hit the ceiling. A guy who competed and was 28-48 in the Big East, all right? All of those things, plus a guy who's connected to Penn State. And to me, why would you hire a mediocre guy who's connected to Penn State? Now, I've been straight up about this. If Nick Saban were a coaching free agent and somebody in a deposition said something equally as bad about Nick Saban, you know what most people would say? Well, it's hearsay. I don't care about that. You know why they would say that? Because Nick Saban is so good at his job that his talents exceed his problems. The same's not true for Greg Schiano. And what Greg Schiano is attached to and accused of is being involved in the largest scandal in the history of college athletics. Now, he denies any involvement in it. But that is much more similar to me to the Art Briles situation than it is to anything having to do with personal failings. If Greg Schiano cheated on his wife and lost his job because of the exact same situation as Bobby Petrino, I would have been like, you know what? The guy deserves another chance. Zero doubt. If he had a motorcycle and he'd had a hot blonde on the back of it and he had wrecked that motorcycle and Rutgers had fired him because he lied about having an affair with one of his employees, I would say, you know what? I understand how that's a messy situation, but that's a personal failing. Here, you're talking about a connection to the worst scandal in the history of college athletics. And for the same reason, by the way, I defended Art Briles being able to coach in professional athletics. I said about Art Briles, when he got that job at the CFL, I was one of very few people out there that said, I don't have a problem with Art Briles being an assistant in the CFL. If a pro sports team wants to hire Art Briles, given the fact that he hasn't been charged with a crime, given the fact that Baylor paid him millions, I don't have a problem at all with a pro sports team bringing in Art Briles and allowing him to be a coach. That's my opinion. A lot of other people did have an issue, and Art Briles got fired, but from a CFL assistant job, I don't know if he's ever going to be able to coach again. I certainly understand why people don't want him to coach at a college level, but if that's the truth, then I'm fine with it. Moreover, Greg Schiano was an awful NFL head coach. He got fired at 4-12. His locker room had a nasty breakout of a flesh-eating bacterial illness. He leaked information about his starting quarterback and said that he was in a drug treatment rehab facility, violating his personal privacy of a medical condition. There were so many red flags about Greg Schiano. I think all led to, again, Greg Schiano would have been a walk or maybe a hit by pitch if I was doing my baseball analogy here. So, Jeremy Pruitt, I'm intrigued to see what he can do. You know the defense is going to be good. Can he in some way manage to get the offense solved? And who's going to hire Hugh Freeze? I don't know who's going to hire Hugh Freeze, but I believe, again, I'm making the case Hugh Freeze deserves a second chance. I think that what he did, again, the NCAA ruling came out. They found that he was not a major culprit of the issues at Ole Miss. And what he did was a personal failing. And if you make mistakes in your life as a husband, as a father, as a son, as a daughter, any of those things, and they just hurt you, I think you deserve more of a chance than somebody whose actions hurt somebody external, somebody outside of his family. So that's my theory. I think most of you agree with me that Hugh Freeze deserves a second chance. Again, 62% of the people in our poll, and we had nearly 20,000 people vote, believe that it makes sense for them to go there. Yes, I will make bowl picks eventually. Again, here are my college football higher rankings if you want them. Chip Kelly to UCLA, grand slam walk-off in Game 7. Jimbo Fisher to Texas A&M, home run. Scott Frost to Nebraska, triple. Double Dan Mullen to Florida. Willie Taggart to FSU. Really a single, but he stretched it into a double because of where the program is. Chad Morris to Arkansas. I think it's a pretty good fit. Bunt for a hit. Chad Luke at Ole Miss. And strikeout Herm Edwards at Arizona State. To be determined. We got guys up at the plate with a bat on their shoulder. 3-2 count with the bases loaded. Joe Moorhead to Mississippi State. Jeremy Pruitt to Tennessee. Josh Heupel to Central Florida. And Jonathan Smith to Oregon State. That's every major hire so far. Oregon is still outstanding. If I were Oregon, I'm going to be honest with you. If I were Oregon, I would pick the same 4 candidates that I said would be my guys at Tennessee if I were hiring. These are the 4 guys that I think Oregon could get that would all be good hires. Kevin Sumlin, Lane Kiffin, bring him back to the Pac-12. Bobby Petrino would do well. I don't have any doubt at all about it. And Mike Leach. Those are the 4 guys that I would consider right now if I were Oregon looking at all of the available hires out there. Those are the 4 that I would have picked from Tennessee. I said that at the time last week. If I had the job and I was deciding like Phil Fulmer was, I would have picked one of those 4 guys. Bobby Petrino, Lane Kiffin, Kevin Sumlin, or Mike Leach. I think all 4 would have come to Tennessee. I think all 4 of those guys would probably take Oregon. Kiffin to Oregon does make an awful lot of sense. Okay? I think that makes a ton of sense. I personally would rather have Mike Leach than Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee, but I think Phil Fulmer made an interesting hire. I think he said there are 2 big things that we need to have. We need to have a guy who can dominate on the line of scrimmage. Remember that Phil Fulmer is an old offensive lineman, and winning on the line of scrimmage matters to him. Even though we're now in a skill position era, for him, it's always about the guys in the trenches, and I think he respects what Jeremy Pruitt has been able to do on the defensive side of the ball. And 2, you got to recruit. You got to recruit your ass off at Tennessee to win championships. You have to get back to recruiting like Phil Fulmer recruited. Frankly, you have to recruit like Butch Jones did, but you have to actually develop the players once they get there. So I think Pruitt has the potential to be a grand slam. I think he has the potential to be a strikeout. I think Mike Leach would have been a solid double for Tennessee. Would have eliminated the uncertainty. Pruitt can be incredible or he can be a total mess. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. I think he has equal measure opportunity on both sides, just like Mississippi State does, just like Josh Heupel does. Josh Heupel, I think, will do really well. I think he's going to do really well at Central Florida. I expect good things for him for sure. But there's lots of open coordinator jobs right now in the SEC. If I were an SEC head coach, I would get my president on the phone. I would get my athletic director on the phone, and I would say, look, I want to get Hugh Freeze. I think Hugh Freeze gets the offense rolling. I think he makes it work. I think he makes it happen at a high level. And I think the fan base is going to respect him and welcome him because they feel like he's paid an appropriate penalty for what is essentially a personal failing. And again, when I asked you guys on this show, would you hire Hugh Freeze at your program, whether we're talking about Missouri, Tennessee, South Carolina, Texas A&M, LSU, it doesn't matter who it is in the SEC or beyond, 62% of people said yes. And a lot of you said not just yes, but hell yes. I think if you could get Hugh Freeze. Now, the only downside about hiring Hugh Freeze is I think if it goes well, he's only there for a year, maybe two. And then he gets another head coaching gig. But if he's great for you for a year, go find somebody else after that year. Take him while you can. It's a one-year business right now in college football. He'd be great for a year. Go get him and win. He delivers results. I agree. All right. I love all of you. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. Reminder, all of our Outkick gear, including all our wonderful DBAP shirts, 20% off if you use the code BOOBS on Outkick.com. Go find the gear. Great Christmas presents there. I appreciate all of you. We'll be live tomorrow, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, talking about the Falcons and the Saints. Big game tonight, Thursday Night Football, as Week 13 games get rolling, the 13th game of the NFL season. Love you guys. Big-time hires. Share the show if you enjoy it. I'm Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show.